The Severed Vein. The night of the severed vein began with the clinking of an old wind chime hanging in front of Granny Thoan's porch. The wind howled down a narrow alleyway, slipping through the rusted metal roof's cracks, producing a sound like someone weeping in the dead of night. The whole Logach neighborhood had been without electricity for several nights. Only the flickering yellow glow of oil lamps leaked from behind door slits, casting shadows on mossy brick walls. Granny Thoan sat at her altar, her fingers slipping along a prayer bead chain as she muttered chants. On the altar, the photo of her husband, Ba, who disappeared 20 years ago, flickered faintly under candlelight. Incense smoke coiled in the air, forming a mist that slithered down the hallway, curling into shapes resembling flickering human figures. Suddenly, there came a knock at the door. Knock, knock! Then silence. Moments later, it returned, louder and more insistent. Thoan shuddered. Who would dare wander the alley at this hour? Before she could rise, the wooden door creaked open by itself. A cold gust blew in, carrying a foul smell of swamp water and damp mold. No one stood outside, only a black cat perched on the step, eyes glowing yellow, fur bristling as it growled at the room. Thoan tried to close the door, but something unseen held it. Her hands trembled, sweat pouring even as the wind bit cold into her bones. Suddenly, the dusty cassette player on the shelf sputtered to life, playing a mangled tape. Static filled the air. Then a hoarse male voice cracked through. Thoan! Thoan! The words dragged like they came from a deep well. Her heart froze. It was Ba's voice. That tape had been burned long ago after his disappearance. She fumbled to turn it off, but the player kept going. I'm back, the voice groaned. The tape unraveled violently, the film spilling like a snake across the table. At the far end of the alley, the abandoned house of Luke's family, burned down in a fire a decade ago, suddenly glowed with a ghostly blue light. Luck, the only survivor of the fire, had returned that night. Thin and gaunt, with sunken eyes, he carried a small oil lamp as he approached the ruins. He looked up at the second floor, where broken windows and charred curtains fluttered. He saw her, his mother, dead in the fire, now standing behind the soot-stained curtains, half shrouded in mist. She smiled warmly and waved like she had never left. Drawn by a phantom pull, Luke stepped onto the creaking stairs. Each step moaned under his weight, yet he continued, his memories spinning threads that lured him forward. On the second floor, darkness reigned except for the flicker of his lamp. "Mom?" he called. A faint reply came from the bedroom. "You're home, son?" He pushed the door open. The stench of charred wood and ash choked the air. Burned handprints seared into the walls. The lamp suddenly went out. Darkness devoured him. In the pitch black, he heard breathing at the back of his neck. He spun around. Then the lamp flared, revealing his mother's disfigured face. One half was burned black, the other bone white. Her eye sockets glowed with fire. She gazed at him with love twisted by resentment. Luke staggered back, but her charred hand gripped his shoulder, her nails ripping through his shirt. "Why did you leave me in the fire?" she hissed. Screaming, he tore free and fled down the stairs. Behind him, thudding footsteps and clattering metal echoed through the house. As Luke burst through the door, the neighborhood plunged into utter darkness. Wind howled like a cursed trumpet through the alley. Wooden doors rattled, mirrors cracked, and windows reflected shadowy figures with no source. Terrified residents lit oil lamps and huddled behind curtains, whispering that tonight, the severed vein, the path between life and death, had opened, and the souls of the unjustly dead were returning. In another house, little Ha sat on the porch hugging her ragged doll. Sewn into the doll's chest was a red patch embroidered with Anne. Granny Two said Anne was Ha's twin, who died in the womb. Ha often played with the doll, whispering secrets and laughing alone. But tonight, she heard Anne tell her, "Go to the backyard." Obediently, Ha slipped through the banana trees barefoot in the damp earth. At the edge of a murky pond, an old wooden boat floated silently. "Let's go for a ride," Anne urged. Ha placed the doll on the bow and climbed in. The pond water stank of rotten mud. Suddenly, pale hands rose from the depths, gripping the boat's edge, fingers long, nails caked with black sludge. Ha screamed, but her cry was swallowed. The boat flipped. As she sank, Ha saw ghostly faces drifting in the water, white, mouth agape, hair billowing like ink in the current. Something grabbed her wrist, tangled in her hair. In her final moment, Ha saw the doll sink beside her, its button eyes glowing red, mouth torn into a wide smile. Back at Granny Thoan's, the altar candle went out. Incense smoke coalesced into a man's figure. Bah. His eyes were deep voids, skin blackened like burnt clay. He stepped forward, his fingers like charred branches. "You came back?" she sobbed. He grinned, voice rasping like crumbling ash. "I've come to take you to the river." Water burst from the floor, flooding the hallway, turning the house into a sunken cabin. Phantoms of brick kiln workers who died in the collapse emerged, lined up in silence, eyes red, flesh peeling. They bowed to her in unison, murmuring, "Come with us." Elsewhere, Luke stumbled to the stone bridge over the canal. At its base, a cracked plaque read, "Bridge of the Departed, 1920. The river shimmered with froth. From below came a lullaby, his mother's old song, but now warped, moaning, broken. The tune dug into his bones, echoing in his skull. He fell to his knees, covering his ears in vain. The stone trembled, split open, and his mother's scorched hand burst out, clutching his ankle. He scrambled back, heel torn and bleeding, rolled down the embankment. Her lullaby turned into a mad cackle, as if the jungle itself laughed. At that same moment, the phantom boat glided across the river, manned by burnt workers. Ba stood at the bow, lantern raised, eyes empty. Thuan sat beside him, eyes glazed white, murmuring, "Keep the fire, dear." The boat was packed with the drowned, the burned, the lost, all silent except the faint chant of a funeral dirge. The boat glowed ghostly green as it passed under drooping palms, swallowed by fog. By dawn, drizzle fell, clearing the smoke. Logach slowly re-emerged, its roofs and moldy walls visible again. But the people whispered. They'd heard footsteps in water, soft prayers in the dark, lullabies sung by no one, and laughter from under bridges. At Toan's house, they found wet floors, a collapsed altar, Ba's broken photo, and a trail of black mud leading to the riverbank. Near the pond, someone discovered Ha's ragdoll. The red patch had faded. Its chest was torn open, revealing a real human baby tooth stitched inside. Ha was gone. No footprints, no trace. The old bridge had partially collapsed, stones missing, a dark hole yawning at its heart. The villagers erected a small shrine by the river and lit incense daily. But each night, the wind carried the scent of ash and mud. Some claimed to glimpse the ghost boat in the fog. Others swore they heard lullabies or saw the ragdoll twitch. The neighborhood earned a new name, the Wandering Vane. Children were forbidden outside after dusk. Doors bolted. Chants whispered in trembling voices. But the curse of the severed vein doesn't close easily. They say that on wind-blown nights, the old wind chime at Toan's house will jingle, signaling that the ghost boat is returning to the dock, ready to take on more passengers. You'll hear the paddle striking the water, soft as drum beats calling the dead. And when the chime suddenly stops, it means the boat has landed. Those who heed the whisper in the night are drawn down to the black depths. By morning, the villagers will pull from the water a face frozen in terror, etched forever in a mirror of glassy stillness. Ash, sludge, water, all become the final station for any soul foolish enough to step into the night of the severed vein, where every step is a lullaby of death and every whisper a dream that never wakes. The Bell at Night. Bin Thuy Secondary School sat nestled in the middle of a desolate field, surrounded by rows of old eucalyptus trees, tall and silent like cemetery sentinels. The school was ancient, built during the French colonial era, its walls weathered and mottled with moss. Though it bustled with students during the day, once night fell, silence devoured the grounds like a vast graveyard. No one dared walk past the school at night, except for one. Ha! A young literature teacher recently assigned to the school, was the only one who stayed past 6 p.m. She enjoyed the quiet for grading papers and preparing lesson plans. Every day, right at 5:30, the school emptied, leaving only her on the second floor of the staff room under the cold white glow of the fluorescent light. Everything began on a rainy evening. While grading, Ha heard the distant sound of the school bell echoing through the hallway. Ding, 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 ding. Each ring long and chilling. She looked up, puzzled. Who would be ringing the bell at this hour? She murmured. The school bell only rang in the morning and during class transitions, and the bell tower had been locked for years. The key hung in the principal's office. Curiosity overcame caution. Ha stepped out into the hallway. A fine mist of rain blanketed the schoolyard, and the wind whistled eerily down the corridor. No one was there. The bell kept ringing, more urgently this time. She followed the sound down to the base of the tower. To her surprise, the wooden door stood ajar. Her heart pounded, but curiosity tugged harder than fear. She opened the door. Darkness engulfed her. The stench of damp wood, mold, and rusty metal invaded her senses. On the spiral staircase leading upward, she spotted muddy footprints, still wet. With trembling hands, she shone her phone's flashlight up the stairs and began to climb. Each step creaked like it might give way at any moment. At the top, the bell stopped ringing. The small chamber was barely large enough to stand in. The rope hung still. Dust coated everything. No one was there. Then behind her, a whisper. "Miss, keep reading." She spun around. No one. The flashlight died. In the smothering darkness, she heard pages turning. Then came the faint voices of children. "Why did you stop, miss? We're still waiting." Giggling echoed from every corner of the tower. Panic surged. She bolted down the stairs, slipping on the damp steps, tumbling out into the hall. That night, and every night afterward, Ha dreamt the same dream. She stood at the front of a full classroom. Students sat still in neat rows. They all wore white uniforms. Their faces were hidden behind drooping hair. They didn't move. On the blackboard, in red chalk like smeared blood, appeared a sentence. "Keep reading, miss. You promised." Disturbed, Ha began searching through old school records. One day, she sneaked into the dusty storage room. Inside a rotting wooden cabinet, she found a yellowed report detailing a long-forgotten incident. In 1998, a fire had engulfed the now-condemned wing of the school, what is now the bell tower. A class had been studying late. The fire claimed 23 students and their teacher. The doors had been locked from the outside. Official reports listed it as an accident, but the teacher's name was never recorded, only noted as volunteer teacher, not officially on staff. Ha's stomach turned. She, too, was a volunteer teacher, unofficially tutoring students after hours. That night, it rained again. The school was deserted. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Clack, clack, clack. She turned and saw the shadow of a student glide past a glass window. She stepped out calling, "Who's there? Why are you still here?" No reply. She followed the shadow to the abandoned classroom. The door stood wide open. Inside, a small oil lamp flickered on the teacher's desk. 23 students sat perfectly still, heads bowed onto their desks, white uniforms soaked as if just pulled from a river. Ha froze. One child lifted its head. Half the face was charred, eyes milky white. "You're here, miss," it cried. All the students raised their heads. Burnt, ashen faces stared at her. Half flesh, half cinder, they spoke in unison. "Read, miss. You promised. We haven't finished class." She tried to flee, but her legs wouldn't move. Her hand reached for the weathered literature book on the desk. First page. "The boat in the distance." Under the lamplight, the words appeared written in blood. Unable to resist, Ha began to read. Each time she paused, chairs scraped, children sobbed, and desperate wailing swelled around her. With every word she read, a drop of blood dripped from an invisible wound on her wrist to the floor. The next morning, the janitor found Ha unconscious in the old classroom. On the chalkboard was written in large red letters, "She finished, but not the whole class." From that day on, no one dared approach Binthui School's bell tower after 5 p.m. But on rainy nights, the bell still rings from the old tower. And if you listen closely, you might hear the whispers of children. "Miss, come read again tomorrow." The Night Watchman at the Morgue. Longha Provincial Hospital was an old and quiet place. The main building, constructed in the 1960s, had peeling paint and walls stained by time. At the far end of the hospital grounds, separated by a row of dense, towering dipterocarp trees, stood the morgue, a one-story tin-roof structure, covered in moss, its rusty iron doors perpetually ajar. It exuded a chill that was difficult to explain. Locals called it the last house. No one ever went near, not even in daylight. Fang, a final-year nursing student, had just been assigned his clinical internship. Because he was new and soft-spoken, he got stuck with night shifts, an assignment nobody wanted. And unfortunately, his first night was at the morgue. "Don't worry," a nurse reassured him as she left, her voice oddly hesitant. "Just stay in the break room. Read, watch something. But don't wander around." Fang nodded. Night fell fast. The lights in the morgue flickered like they were on the brink of death. Inside the break room, the old fan creaked with each turn, and the wind outside whispered through the cracks like someone murmuring from afar. Around 11 p.m., heavy rain began to fall. The hospital grounds were deserted. Thang was dozing off when he heard a metallic clatter. Clink, 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 like the sound of a stretcher rolling over tile. He sat up. Silence. Then it came again, clearer, closer. The rattling wheels, followed by a faint moan. He grabbed a flashlight and opened the break room door. The hallway stretched ahead, mostly dark, lit only by a flickering fluorescent bulb. No one in sight, but on the floor there was a trail of water smeared like something soaked had been dragged along. He turned back and froze. A rusty, empty stretcher now sat in the middle of the hallway. He was sure it hadn't been there earlier. He stepped toward it, trembling. Suddenly, the wheels screeched and began to roll, slowly, back toward the morgue, as if someone invisible was pushing it. The morgue door creaked open. Inside, a faint light flickered, like a flashlight, and there was the rustling sound of funeral cloth. "Is someone there?" Thang called out. No answer. From the gap in the door, a hand reached out, pale white, covered in cuts, its nails black as if charred. It gently tugged at the stretcher, then vanished back inside. Thang collapsed to the floor, frozen with terror. He wanted to run, but his legs wouldn't move. When he looked up, the morgue door had slammed shut. Silence returned. Panicking, he reached for his phone, but there was no signal. The rain pounded harder, thunder crashed overhead. He locked himself in the break room and stayed there, trembling until dawn. The next morning, he told the attending doctor everything. The doctor simply frowned and muttered, "You were probably just tired, but next time, don't open the door if you hear the stretcher." 3 nights later, Thang had another shift. Though terrified, he showed up. This time, he brought garlic and left a Buddhist chant playing on loop. Around 2 a.m., the chanting suddenly stopped. At that same moment, an ambulance siren wailed from the hospital's entrance, yet no ambulance had been called. The lights flickered, then died. A strange odor filled the room, metallic, rotting, and faintly burnt. The door shook with 3 hard knocks. Bang, bang, bang! Someone was outside. He dared not open it. The stretcher wheels scraped against the floor again, slowly, deliberately. Then came soft, childlike giggling. Thang's body went numb. From the gap beneath the door, he saw a figure pass by, wearing a white coat, long black hair hiding its face. By sunrise, everything was back to normal. But on the doorknob, there was a single white chrysanthemum, still wet from the rain. From that night on, every shift was a battle with fear. Thang began seeing things no one else believed. An old man in a hospital gown, standing in the rain, staring at the break room window. A mute nurse silently gliding down the hallway at 3 a.m., groans coming from the body lockers. One night, he dared open locker number 4, the one permanently sealed due to a malfunction. The door creaked open with eerie ease. Inside, it was empty, but etched into the metal wall, scratched by fingernails, were words. "Don't open. I'm not ready to leave." He slammed it shut. On his final night, Thang resolved to end his internship at the morgue for good. Around 1 a.m., as he gathered his things, he saw a woman in a hospital gown walking out of the morgue, moving slowly, as if lost. He called to her, but she didn't respond. When she turned around, he saw her face, empty sockets instead of eyes, just 2 black pits. Her skin was torn in places, like it had been burned. She raised a decaying finger, pointed at him, and whispered, "Your turn is coming." Thang bolted from the morgue and never looked back. Months later, long after he'd left the hospital, Thang received a phone call from an unknown number at 2:03 a.m., the precise hour when strange things used to happen. He answered, but all he heard was the clink-clink of stretcher wheels and the faint groan of something being dragged across cold tile. The song from the dry well. Ankui village was an ancient settlement nestled among gloomy limestone mountains. Although the village had electricity, the locals refrained from turning on lights at night. They believed that artificial light could guide wandering spirits. And in the center of the village, beneath a centuries-old banyan tree, stood a dry well that no one dared approach after dusk. They called it the Silent Well. The story begins when Koa, an architecture student from the city, came to the village for a heritage survey project. He stayed at the home of Granny Tu, a nearly 80-year-old woman who lived just 20 meters from the well. She was the only person who dared to look directly at the well at night. "I'm used to it," she rasped. "It's like a person, sometimes quiet, sometimes needing someone to hear it sing. Koa dismissed her as rambling. They had until the first night. Around 1 a.m., while drafting a sketch, he heard singing coming from the backyard. A female voice, clear, haunting, singing a lullaby in an ancient dialect he couldn't understand. He crept outside. Under the pale moonlight, the surface of the well gleamed like an open eye staring up at the sky. The song echoed clearly from its depths. He pointed his flashlight into the well, but all he saw was darkness. No water. No one. Just that airy voice, like wind slipping through a crack. Lost down the shadowed path whose hand still holds mine. Koa stepped back, shivering. He told Granny 2 the next morning, but she simply lit an incense stick and said, "The well remembers. It's calling. Don't answer it." But Koa was curious. The next night, he set up his phone to film, pointing it straight down into the well. The next morning, he reviewed the footage and froze. A woman's face had appeared faintly, suspended in the void. Pale skin, black hollow eyes, lips mouthing the song. The longer he stared, the clearer she became, until suddenly the face turned and looked straight at the camera. He dropped the phone. The back was cracked, right over where her eyes had appeared. From that night on, every night at exactly 2:37 a.m., someone knocked on his bedroom door. No one was ever there. But each morning, just outside the door, he'd find a small puddle of water, a sharp metallic smell, and a single long strand of soaking wet hair. Koa began having the same dream repeatedly. A girl in white sat beside the well, hair cascading over her shoulders, endlessly singing. When he approached, she turned around, but had no face, just a dark void. He'd wake drenched in sweat, the lullaby still echoing in his ears. Finally, he confronted Granny 2 about the well. She lowered her voice barely above a whisper. Years ago, a girl named Nan, beautiful as an angel, was forced to marry an old rich man. The night before the wedding, she jumped into the well, but didn't die. People didn't pull her up, fearing bad luck. She cried for help for 7 days, until her voice gave out. Then silence. Since then, her voice still sings from the well. Anyone who answers her call will be dragged down to take her place. That night, Koa decided to leave the village. Around 2 a.m., as he was packing, the singing returned. But this time it was different. Trembling, choking, like someone singing with their last breath. "Come back, join me, beneath." He turned, a knock on the door. Then it creaked open, though he had locked it from inside. The girl in white stood there. Her hair hung like seaweed, her clothes dripping water. Her eyes were bottomless pits. She said nothing, just pointed behind him. Koa turned. In the mirror, his reflection wasn't his own. It was her, grinning. Then everything went black. The next morning, villagers found Koa lying unconscious at the well's edge. His hands clutched the rim, as if he had just fought something pulling him down. He was taken to the hospital. When he woke, he didn't speak, didn't move. His eyes stared blankly into nothing. Koa was sent back to the city. But every night at exactly 2:37 a.m., his phone would automatically play a recording. Dripping water, a lullaby, and at the very end, a soft whisper. "I'm waiting down here.